Hayden Locke, President and CEO of Marimaca Copper. We're developing the Marimaca Oxide project in northern Chile, and we have made a very exciting new discovery at our Pampa Medina project to the northeast of the Marimaca Oxide project, which is part of the reason we're having this discussion.
Well, Pampa Medina and you also an option of additional land. Right, it's the last day of the year. It's just you and me working in the industry, I think, today, but ending the year on quite a strong note. So tell us, first of all, about what you found up at Pampa Medina, please.
So Pampa Medina, if you recall, was the project that we acquired. It's a shallow leachable oxide resource, which we think is very complementary to the Marimaca Oxide project. But we always said we thought it was in the middle of a really exciting exploration target, that it could extend to the north along strike, to the south along strike, but also up and down dip at depth. And this is the first drill hole that we've drilled. It's a 400-meter step out to the north, and it intersected some amazing mineralization. It's a slightly deeper, so it's certainly down plunge to the north, but there's opportunities for us to come back up plunge and closer to surface as we go to the south and to the west of these drill holes. So we're pretty excited about it. It is only one drill hole, but it is an amazing drill hole when you think of it in the context of what we already have in terms of the resources that we have there.
Well, give us the grades. What are we talking about?
Yeah, so the entire intersection is about 400 meters at 0.5%, but there is a really nice intersection at the top, which is about 100 meters at a bit over 1%. But within that, we've got a 50-meter zone that's 2%. And within that, we've got a 20-meter or thereabouts zone that's a bit over 5%, which when you think about, Kamoa Kakula, Robert Friedland's pet, his favorite toy in the copper industry, they're running at about 5% mined grade. So that is a seriously good intersection over that kind of width.
And is that sort of typical of the region? What else is going on around there? Has there been other drilling? Give us a sense of what's happened before?
Yeah, well, actually, I've got some slides that I can show you. There's one here.
Yeah, pull them up.
Yeah, so there's one here that shows just a map of the area. And it really is a new belt of discovery. So Mantos Blancos, which you see down here in the southern portion, was always a bit of an anomaly, standalone. Nobody really understood why it was so much bigger than the other coastal mantos until Cachorro was discovered by Antofagasta Minerals, which is up here in the northeast. Now, that is a tier 1 discovery made by Antofagasta. It's about 20 kilometers away from our property. And it really changed the mentality of what was possible in this belt. So Cachorro hasn't had any grades like that sort of 5% zone, but they certainly have had 100 meters at 1% plus. Most of their drilling is sort of in that range. And the way these mantos work, if I skip through onto a couple of other slides, is they're stratigraphically controlled. So the way we look at it is we have an upper volcanic unit. This is our interpretation of the Pampa Medina manto. And then this sedimentary unit, which we believe is the most productive unit in this part of the world, which is quite a different interpretation of the geology of these deposits. And as you see, this is the historical Pampa Medina resource right in the middle there that I'm pointing to, Pampa Medina manto. We've stepped out 400 meters to the north, drilling on an east-west axis, and intersected the same manto, obviously very high grade in the top section, and then a nice section that transitions into, very interestingly, more bornite mineralization, which is a really interesting mineral to be getting in your exploration drilling. So overall, we're pretty excited about the potential to continue to extend this, and we're going to be focusing a lot on it in 2025.
Okay, well, this whole one, so when you say continuing, what does that mean in terms of meters, in terms of or dollars spent on it?
In terms of this drill hole or exploration?
Beyond, into next year, what's happening next?
Yeah, so I'd say we're working through our budgets at the moment, but we want to go back and follow up on this drill hole. We're still waiting on the results from 3 drill holes in different areas. And if I show you a map as to where so we've got the results from SMR01, which is this one here, the step out to the north. We're waiting on the results from SMR04, SMR03 and SMR02. Each of those is targeting the same productive horizon, but obviously, as you can see here, it's an enormous area that we're targeting now, extending sort of 3 kilometers by 2 kilometers, given that it's a stratigraphically controlled deposit. So it's very much focused on the stratigraphies that are productive, mostly the sedimentary unit and the tuff below that. There is the potential that this could be extensive in all directions and be quite a significant new source of copper. So in terms of budgets, we'll start with a couple of $1 million early in the new year. We're just going through our budgets now, but certainly at least 10 to 12,000 meters of additional drilling starting in January to follow up on these results. Come back and infill in between the Pampa Medina resource that we have, but also step out further to the north, further to the west, potentially even down plunge to the east.
Well, I mean, you've been rewarded for like a brave step out. I mean, 400 meters, you're doing real drilling, real exploration. What's the data that you're using to identify these sort of the targets that you're going for?
Yeah, it's a pretty challenging place to explore. This is a picture of the deposit itself. So Pampa Medina, it's a pampa area, so it's a flat lying plain. There's no outcrop of rocks. And so exploration, all of these discoveries will be blind. So we've done it through a historical review of all of the drilling at Pampa Medina, which allowed us to log the core and look at where the mineralization was hosted. We've also done geophysical work, some resistivity lines, some mag surveys to try and help us target areas that look similar to the Pampa Medina deposit. And what we saw along strike to the north, along where hole SMR01 was collared, was a continuation of a resistivity low, which was pretty much coincident with the middle of the Pampa Medina deposit. So we're using a variety of different methods to help us target. What we saw was a resistivity low continuing not just 400 meters to the north, but another kilometer to the north of this line. And so we think there's the potential to continue to extend. Obviously, it's not diagnostic until you drill it. But we have the same resistivity lines done to the south of Pampa Medina, which show similar sort of resistivity lows and present us with another compelling opportunity to follow up on.
Right. Okay. And I'm sure we can get into maybe a slightly more technical session in the new year. I'm just interested now in terms of the picture you're painting now. Obviously, we've got the MOD, the oxide deposit. This drilling here, what does that do for prospective strategic investors, acquisitors of the company and the MOD project? It obviously suggests there's a lot more to be had. How far along that journey do you go, or how do you approach conversations now with what you know?
You know, it completely changes the complexion of this opportunity, primarily because this is a leachable resource that is within 30 kilometres of the MOD, where we would logically build the MOD facilities. And so what that means is it's no longer, we've talked about the fact that we're targeting 50,000 tonnes of copper cathode for a mine life of, if we include all of the inferred resources, of 15 to 16 years, something along those lines. Pampa Medina, the historical resource, which was about 40 million tonnes at 0.7%, let's call it, was based on a strike of about 500 metres. We've just almost doubled the strike of this deposit. And so what it means is with this and the Madrugador deposit, there is quite a significant leachable copper resource in this, and we haven't really explored the edges of it yet. And so when you start to think about the scale of the opportunity of a long-term copper cathode producing project, this starts to get into the realms of the much bigger players in the industry. And so it really is quite a game-changing discovery. We would like to take Marimaca into production, and we would like to have this as our growth story that attaches to the Marimaca project. Whether or not we make it will be a function of our shareholders making that decision.
Is that them beating down the door in the background? Let's say yes.
100%.
100%. Okay, with regards to what this does for you, let's talk about Madrugador first, because I want to kind of again come back to this big picture that you're painting and the potential for the region, the Sierra de Medina district. So you've obviously optioned this. I mean, when you break down what that deal looks like and what you think it does for you, why do it now?
Well, it's obviously we're looking at the 50,000 tonne. I've always said is the smallest sort of globally significant scale that you'd want to have for a project of in the copper space. Anything you can do to grow that would be worthwhile. But the real reason we started looking at these deposits is the holding cost for land in Chile has gone up. We've been pretty balance sheet constrained in terms of our ability to explore until our recent investment from our new partners, Asor. But when we reviewed this data, we realized that there was probably an incorrect geological interpretation about where Pampa Medina was hosted. I think everybody thought it was a traditional coastal manto in the form of Mantos Blancos, which is hosted in a volcanic unit. What we realized when we relogged all the core, all of the information that we had, was it was actually hosted in the sedimentary unit, which is much more like the Cachorro discovery made by Antofagasta. And then as we started to review all of the data we had, we realized that there were quite a lot of shallower showings of this sedimentary unit, which is the productive unit, certainly in and around this Madrugador brack area to the south of our deposit. So that is, sorry, I'm drawing in the wrong area. It's just there, that yellow area. So there are shallow, high-grade, leachable copper intersections, historical, of course, that we have the data for, which lead us to believe that the productive unit is regionally extensive. And so we've done our best to consolidate all of the land, which is prospective for this style of mineralization. The one bit that we don't have is the middle bit, which is owned by Antofagasta Minerals themselves. We would like to think that there's a possibility we can do a deal to consolidate everything, but I think that's quite unlikely. But with the land package we have the dominant land holding for everything that's prospective for this mineralization, we believe.
Right. Okay. So obviously between the two of you, you're not going to see too much competition for additional. Well, I imagine it's going to stop other people kind of coming in, isn't it? Because you hold quite a significant land package right now, so it's a kind of barrier for people.
Yeah, it's a difficult place to peg ground anyway in Chile. We're surrounded by Antofagasta, SQM, and then us. We have there are some smaller landowners, but we've sort of negotiated with the groups that we think have the best land packages for us.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, actually. Obviously, with our project in Chile as well, so very conscious of this. There's a certain size and scale that you're going to need to be able to demonstrate quite quickly if you want to get funding and so forth. So I guess some of these smaller land packages will struggle on the funding front. Okay, well, can you just what's that cost you? It's about $12 million in total over 5 years if you go all the way down the line. And why do you think that's good value for you?
Well, we've done our internal numbers, and this certainly, from an internal perspective, adds we think at least 50% of production to our targeted production profile for a minimum life of 10 years. We're paying $12 million over 5 years, with the majority of it in year 5. So the net present value of that is certainly well below 12 million for something that we think is worth a couple of $100 million at today's copper price. It's a pretty good deal for us, but it also gives us quite a lot of time to go and assess and work out, just how valuable this is and do we want to continue. So we have time to invest and to try and find the limits of the mineralized envelope. And so we think it's a very good deal for our shareholders.
And some historic data that comes with it, so it gives you a head start, huh?
We have an enormous amount of historic data. We actually have a bit over 100,000 meters of historical drilling, which is why we've been able to target so well this drill hole. So all of these blue dots that you see up here around these drill holes are historical drilling that were in our view, drilled too shallow and drilled on the wrong orientation. Hence why they likely didn't hit the mineralization that we hit in the first drill hole at Pampa Medina.
And do you have all the core?
We have all the core for the Pampa Medina project. So we have about 41,000 meters of drilling, of which most of it is core. We also have all of the logs and lithologies for the Madrugador deposits. And then we have historical logs and some assays for all the other drilling.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I guess. And when how old is this data? What are we talking about?
Most of it drilled by Anglo-American in the 90s. And the reason that they wouldn't have drilled any deeper is because they were looking for a Mantos Blancos style manto deposit, which is the traditional geological interpretation, which was hosted in the volcanics. But what we know from Cachorro is there is a style of deposit, especially in the northern extent of this belt, which is hosted in the next unit down, which is a sedimentary unit, and into the unit below that, which is a rhyolitic tuff. So it's a complete game changer in terms of geology. Our geologists worked it out quickly, and we have spent the last 6 to 8 months pegging all of this ground and making sure that we control the best of it. And then we've obviously come back and drilled our first drill hole and had some success.
And so we haven't mentioned grades here. What's the range are we looking at?
So the drill hole, the broader zone of mineralization's big. There's a lot of low grade, still above economic cutoff grade, but it's 400 meters at 0.5%. But the upper manto, there's about 100 meters at 1.2 to 1.3%. And then within that, you've got a sort of 70 odd meter zone at 1.5%, a 50 meter zone at 2%, and then right at the bottom, a very nice 20 odd meter zone at a bit over 5% copper. And that's all leachable copper. So that is oxides or primary chalcocite.
Right. Okay. Right. So if we can just sort of talk about look, you've achieved a lot this year. I think in terms of corporately, a lot. You've been through the phases, shall we say? I mean, in fact, it might be worth reminding people of what you can sort of tick off this year, because I'm more interested in now what happens next year, kind of how close you are to kind of creating that kind of step change in valuation. So maybe look at 2024. What have you done?
Yeah, there's been a lot going on. So we've obviously done quite a bit of exploration. We had a bit of success with Mercedes, but really the big success has been this step out drilling at Pampa Medina. We've acquired both the Pampa Medina and Madrugador projects, which we think are incredibly accretive to the broader story of Marimaca. Brought in a new partner while saying farewell to to one of our other partners in Tembo Capital, and really shored up the balance sheet and allowed us to go out and do some more exploration. We've started the building out of our owners team, so we've hired some exceptional people into our team, mostly from Capstone, with building experience, but a lot of design and operational experience in Chile. And then obviously we've been a little bit delayed in terms of our engineering, had a few issues in terms of the quality of the work that we were presented with and had to go back and redo it. But we have now lodged our permit application, so that is in. The clock has started, and we expect to have initial feedback early in the new year, sort of towards the end of January, as to whether or not we'll be accepted as the DIA or be pushed to resubmit as an EIA, two different permitting processes. So yeah, we have made a lot of progress. We're a long way into the definitive feasibility study now. Mine plan's done, geometallurgical model, all those done. Phase 7 MET is almost complete, just in the report write-up phase, which has confirmed a lot of what we've seen previously. So yeah, it's been a year of progress. There's been some frustration, certainly on our timelines, but really the critical path is the permitting. And now that that application is in, we would hope to have visibility for 2025 on our timelines by sort of February.
And what do you think you need to achieve in 2025? Like, say, there are. I mean, you've had a real uptick in 2024. It was sort of steady growth. I think at one point, beginning of the year, you were $3, and now we're sort of well over $5, because you're kind of building something bigger. We always talked back in the early days about it was small but perfectly formed, but that scale was always the issue. You're solving for those problems now with everything that you do, and with parts of the project moving forward in terms of DFSs and all the permitting and so forth, which is they move to monetization or to revenue generation, if you want to get this thing built. But 2025, are you going to do anything over and above just proving that the MID project works? Where's the value come from, or the big step change come from?
Yeah, we're going to focus a lot on exploration, and I think what I wanted to do was do a sort of small-ish exploration program to test the theories, because Sergio Rivera, our VP Exploration, has been presenting this exploration model to me, and it's very compelling. And so we wanted to spend a little bit of money to test that theory. We've had the success. 2025 will be about parallel development of the mod. So we're going to continue to march that forward and develop that project. That's our most advanced, and as it currently stands, our best project. And then in parallel with that, we're going to go back and to the original value creation strategy, which was exploration. And we're going to explore aggressively in the areas surrounding Pampa Medina and the broader Sierra de Medina area. And then I would hope, subject to the board approving this, that I want to go back and test the potential for sulfides at depth below Marimaca, because that is the great unanswered question. So there will be a very clear dual-pronged strategy. We will focus on building out our owners team, doing detailed design and engineering, tying up all of the loose ends that we need to go through to take this project into production. as quickly as we possibly can. So there'll be debt financing, detailed design and engineering, building out the owners team. Obviously, the permitting discussion is going to be very important. And then in parallel, to try and avoid the dreaded Lassonde trough, while we're going through the boring but necessary phase, we'll be doing a lot of exploration work.
Right. Okay. Okay. And in terms of how you start shaping this up and showing us sort of the potential for an integrated infrastructure project. I mean, how do you go about doing that when bits of it are so far ahead of the rest?
So in the DFS, we can submit the DFS, and then there is a ability under the 43101 to have a section where you have an integration study for the Pampa Medina deposit, which we will probably do just to be able to paint the picture. We won't be able to present combined economics, but we will be able to present, okay, we intend to mine and crush and leach Pampa Medina at the Pampa Medina site, and then send PLS, pregnant leach solution, to a centralized processing facility at Marimaca and a raffinate back. It's part of the reason we've slowed the definitive feasibility studies to consider all of the potential knock-ons in terms of what scale of infrastructure we need to employ, and certainly around water and things like that. So yes, we will be able to present some sort of integration. We won't be able to present the combined economics, but in the end, I don't think our investors need to see combined economics. They can draw the conclusions themselves. We'll be able to present separate economics of the two deposits. But from our perspective, we've already looked at Pampa Medina. It is a really nice little project as it currently stands, and we're hoping that with the success of this exploration program, it's going to become a whole lot bigger.
So that kind of incremental capacity expansion part of it doesn't sound onerous. It's not a long drawn out process. It's just something that you guys will try and work at internal economics and timing of, and indeed what you start to build. Do you build for that potential from the start, or do you bolt it on as an add-on later? That's something that you've got to get through in 2025?
Yeah, I think it's the logical thing to do. The benefit you have with a SXEW project is it's quite modular in terms of your ability to expand. And so there's no rush to bring Pampa Medina in, other than it adds quite a lot of value to us. But bear in mind, we still have to go through detailed metallurgical studies, geotech drilling. We have to do permitting. We have to do all of those things, which will mean it will never be able to catch up with the Marimaca oxide deposit. So Marimaca will be developed first, and then our objective is to try to move everything further forward so that we can bring additional value and additional cash flow forward for our investors.
Okay, but with the view in your head that you're going to avoid needing to build standalone facilities for the other projects, this will feed into. So is it kind of spoken hub type thing? Is that in your head because of the proximity?
Yeah, I mean,
it will be efficient.
Based on the grades that you have at Pampa Medina, it probably works. If you increase the scale of it, it probably works as a standalone project. But one of the things in our mind is using the hub and spoke methodology and having a centralized SXEW and a pipeline that gets amortized by a project of such high grade. It means that you can then unlock much lower grade deposits in the broader area. So you probably look to build a centralized heap leach facility in this area and a pipeline to feed it back to a processing facility so that you can unlock much lower grade material in and around Pampa Medina, like the PS discovery. I mean, we've barely talked about that. That is a large, very large system, but it's much lower grade, sort of 0.2 to 0.3, maybe 0.35%. It's above economic cutoff grade. It's never going to displace the Marimaca Oxide project. It's never going to displace Pampa Medina. But in 25 years' time, when you're looking for oxides to put through a hungry SXEW plant, if you've got that infrastructure in place, it makes it a whole lot more economic to then mine and drive to that, mine a truck to a much closer crushing and leaching facility.
Right. Okay. So you're kind of optimistic about where this project goes. How optimistic are you in the context of copper? I don't necessarily want this to be a pom-pom waving exercise for copper, because it did not deliver in 2024. I'm not sure what did in 2024, but copper didn't kind of move through the phases like we all hoped it would. What's holding that back? Do you expect to see much change in 2025?
I think there's, as I've made the comment previously, it's still a commodity which is driven by economic growth. Although we're talking about this electrification and the story of electrification and all of that sort of stuff, which, I have my doubts as to how quickly that can possibly happen, but it is a long-term thematic which is going to play out. I don't think the long-term value drivers for copper have changed at all, but it is still very much affected by short-term volatility and short-term economic drivers. Now we have China, which everybody from the outside is saying China's limping into 2025 and there are all sorts of problems and they're going to need more stimulus. There's the threat of trade wars with Trump becoming the president. There are a lot of reasons why people are nervous about the potential for an extension of sort of anemic economic growth and what that does to the demand for copper. So actually, from my perspective, people say, copper didn't do very much, but I think it performed exceptionally well given, interest rates haven't come down as quickly as we thought they would. Inflation has been stubbornly high. China has not been healthy, although, they're still demanding record amounts of copper. I think overall it's performed exceptionally well. When we get to a period where there is a uptick in economic growth, and there is the potential that occurs in 2025. The Trump experiment will go one of two ways, in my view. It'll either be an outrageous success or an unmitigated disaster. But given how well copper's held up, I'm exceptionally excited about what's going to happen in 2025 and 2026.
So you don't see some of these, because some of these thematics with Trump coming in look like they're going to not necessarily take a back seat, but certainly slow down a bit. The EV components, the decarbonisation goals, for instance, and even this kind of slowdown of the China market. Do you think there's enough of the normal drivers in the market in terms of urbanization and the technology development? And the lack of production, lack of supply into the market. Do you think those are going to be enough to actually move this forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've always been a little bit skeptical of this net zero target by 2035 or 2050 or whenever it's going to occur, because the investment required to achieve that is pretty challenging. And we're seeing the same thing with EVs at the moment in terms of what's going to happen in the longer term. I think in terms of my views on what's driving the copper price in the sort of short to medium term and medium to long term is more about electricity demand and what that does to the aging infrastructure, which is delivering electricity around the world. I mean, we talk about the amount of data that is being created. Every year, the human race today creates more data that has been sort of created in human history for every year prior. And that's only going to continue with the advent of AI and all of the things that are occurring in terms of technological advancement. But all of those require enormous amounts of additional electricity, and our grids, as they currently stand, are not capable of taking the amount of electricity demanded wherever it comes from, whether it comes from coal, from nuclear, from whatever. The electricity demand that needs to be put across our networks, our aging networks, and through our aging substations, it's not possible without significant upgrades. We're seeing China invest massively in upgrading their infrastructure, but the rest of the world has not done that yet. And so I think that's going to have to happen regardless of what you believe about this energy transition. And that's the real reason that I'm still extremely bullish in the medium to long term on copper. Of course, there's a risk of substitution. Aluminium starts to look a lot cheaper, a lot better when copper prices run aggressively. But I still think that decarbonisation and sort of pollution angle, where aluminium is significantly higher carbon emissions per tonne of product produced, will remain for the foreseeable future. I don't think it's going to evaporate overnight. So, yeah, I'm still very positive in the medium to long term on copper.
Well, Hayden, I appreciate you making time today. I'm going to let you get back to the family and get on with things. Great year for you guys in 2024. I mean, one of our favourite stories. 2025, equally excited to see what you do. Appreciate your time. See you soon.
Thanks, Matt.